More Norwegian records by some familiar brothers, 200 sub-3 marathons on one pair of legs, colleges are canceling sports, and Andy and Zach dig into the fascinating intersection of personality and performance.
Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to AtoZrunning.
Welcome back. We got episode 37 here for you. I'm Zach.
And I'm Andy.
And we have lots to talk about, as always. Now, before we get into it, I did want to mention, this week I feel like I've just had a number of normal feeling experiences with running, which is just wonderful. Let me tell you all about it. So first of all, I've been dealing with a shin problem. I mentioned last week that I got some kind of injury thing, and I was able to see my doctor very quickly and then go on to see Adam Homolka at Endurance Rehab for some physical therapy. That was just early in the week, and this was about a week ago from while you're listening to this, and Adam was very helpful, as he always is. Adam he's quite insightful, and he is an expert in his field, absolutely. So we identified what appears to be just kind of like a strain in the muscle and got right on finding out where the areas that might be putting pressure on that, and I think we've kind of resolved it. I've been feeling pretty good running since then and just easing back into it. But part of the reason I needed to try to get back into running quickly is because I was scheduled to run a race, like an actual event.
Yes, that was so much fun.
So Rebecca put on the Team Orphans Social Distance 5K on Saturday at Robinette's, and we saw many of you there. And some of you mentioned that you were listening to us, and we didn't necessarily know who you were, and so now we can put names with faces. We just really appreciate that. So if you're ever hesitant and oh, that's Zach or Andy, or because we just wear AtoZrunning everywhere we go, so it's pretty hard to miss us. But if you're ever just hesitant, just come up and say hi. Yeah. It's been really exciting. So that was really cool because we've been craving that.
Yeah, and I've been craving donuts. So even though I couldn't run, I could still eat Robinette's donuts. That was pretty solid.
That did happen.
It did happen.
For real. So yeah, we just really enjoyed that. We kind of disobeyed the race's instructions to leave the premises right away after the race.
Oh, I left the premises of the race part of it.
We just
and then
walked over to Robinette's, got some donuts.
Yeah. We did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just hard. It's also hard to leave because it feels so good to be at an event and other runners. And
I saw my cousin there.
Yeah,
and my aunt.
And your aunt and a number of old Rockford teachers, which you didn't see. I saw. Okay. So shout out to Rockford High School teachers. Just some really cool things going on. And so we were glad to be a part of that, and it felt kind of like semi-normal in a sense, just to do it. And it was a very creative race as well with the way they, made it happen. And I thought that was kind of neat too. So if you didn't get a chance to participate, it means you were ignoring the many times we told you to participate in that race.
Or you don't live there. I mean,
okay, sure.
All the
so obviously we know that not everyone listening is West Michigan. So if you didn't get a chance to, but you're just thinking to yourself, I kind of want to get out, and look for those opportunities because we know they're happening. We've seen a few more, and we'll keep letting you know about those opportunities too, because I just think we gotta do it. It just feels so good to get the running community somehow intersecting again.
And we're gonna create a blog post that has some of the great things that Team Orphans Social Distance 5K did that we think that maybe if you're considering putting on a small event, that you might want to mirror, to do the same thing, because it worked really well.
It did. It was wonderful. And I was one of those who ran in the very first time slot. So I got to just kind of hang around while people were coming and going. And I didn't have to worry about trying to run anymore myself. There's something about when you get the pressure of actually doing the run out of the way, the rest of the event is so much more fun to enjoy.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Or you just aren't running and you're eating donuts. So,
or sometimes just being there and spectating.
But we have to say that this is going to be a great episode about where personality meets performance. And I think that you're going to really enjoy some of the quotes we have, some of the athletes we're going to talk about. So we'll get into the world of running, and then we have a great topic for you. So
all right.
Stay tuned.
Thanks for keeping me on track, Andy. Let's do this.
The Ingebrigtsen brothers from Norway were on fire in their own personal track meet.
They're at it again.
Yeah.
It just can't be stopped.
Yeah, so the meet was kind of odd because there was
Yes.
hardly any athletes there.
There's hardly anyone, period,
Right.
there. As a matter of fact, in order to create the impression of fans and spectators, they literally lined the home straightaway 5 rows deep with cardboard cutouts of
That's
people,
amazing.
like fully painted,
I
clothing
would have
painted
set
on
my
and everything.
face there. That would have
Right.
been
You would have set your face? What?
like said, "Hey, here's my cutout. Let's pretend I'm there."
Oh, you want to
that
send them a
that's
picture of
awkward to say.
yourself and
Okay,
say
that's
pretend
weird.
to be that
Yeah.
that's strange. But they also had puppets. Some people like took PVC pipe, like life-size puppets with PVC pipes strapped and everything. We're gonna link to this article so you can scroll down and see the pictures. This is just grand. And then some people who wanted to still cheer live got some of those like high-low things, you know, with the big basket and it just raises it up super high. I don't know how they got some of those. First of all, there's like 3 of them all mashed together, and they're up above the stadium on the one side, so they can still see what's going on inside the stadium.
Crazy.
I know. Super
They
fans.
love track there, and
They
I
do.
would love to see the track here in the U.S. get to be like that. That's like my dream.
First, we need a family of brothers who are breaking records every time they race, even if there's no one else in the race.
Pretty incredible, yeah. So Philippe, he is one of the older brothers from Norway. He got a 2:16 1K Norwegian record.
That's fast.
It's very
Solid.
fast.
So the 1K goes down to Philippe, and then
Well, I have to say first about this race.
yes,
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
link to it. I have the YouTube video. I watched the whole thing. I didn't realize when they started it that it was all rabbits but him. So it was like 3 rabbits.
it looked like
and
it was
him.
a race going
and he
on.
finished by himself. So
Yeah.
technically, he got the national record for Norway in a race that it was only him. He's
Yeah.
the only finisher.
Now, it should be mentioned that they didn't used to allow that for records. To
Okay.
have a legitimate record, you used to have competition, competitors
Okay.
in the race. Otherwise, it's just a solo time trial with rabbits, which
Mhm.
seemed like, for a time at least, that was kind of an unfair way to try to chase records. But now, obviously, you have to let that be the case because you don't even have opportunities for races these days.
Right. And there were people there as rabbits that just, they could be,
Yeah.
they could probably say that they're just DNFs or something like that.
Well,
I don't know.
mean, sure. But they do allow it now. You
Yeah.
can time trial a record if there are other factors involved. You know, you have to get it on
They
film and
also
all this
had
stuff.
like the laser on the track too.
Yeah, that's kind of a newer thing since Nike's Marathon Breaking 2 project where they were doing that with Kipchoge. Now they've been doing that a little bit more in track meets.
So
and
there's
stuff.
a laser. For those of you that don't know, there's a laser that is set at the pace of the world record or American record or whatever.
Whatever record they're
Yeah,
chasing,
whatever
yeah.
record they're chasing. And the athlete is able to see it visibly on the track, not just the spectators on television.
So all you Wii track and field players, or just the old Nintendo track and field, when you had to do the thing where you were like racing against the ghost of the record holder, you know, and you had to like chase the ghost kind of thing, it's actually real. But it's
Ah.
just lasers.
That's so crazy.
I
So
wonder
tell
if
us.
so you could put a laser for your own PR or for your most recent
Ah.
performance and then chase your own record. Mm.
Interesting. All this PR chasing people are doing these days.
Speaking of which, Jacob, the youngest of the Ingebrigtsen brothers, ran. He's 19 years old, by the way. We've been talking about him being young in general, but we need perspective here. He's 19 years old,
Yeah.
and he just broke another national record, and this time in the 2K. And not only did he break a national record, he ran 4:50, which means very little for most of us because it's a 2K. It's very abstract. But to put it in global perspective, it's the 7th fastest 2K time ever by a human, or at least he's the 7th fastest person. And, you know, so he's right behind Kenenisa Bekele, world record holder in the 5K and 10K. Epic. You know, he's the one who ran 2 seconds slower than Kipchoge's marathon record. Like, he's good stuff. So he's right behind Kenenisa's 2K time. And some people will say, well, Bekele didn't really, like, kill it in shorter distances ever. But he was still an incredible runner.
Yeah,
So
one of the best
there's
of all
that.
time.
He also just barely beat Noah Nageni's 2K record, and Noah Nageni is the 2nd fastest miler in the history of time. He's the one who would have broken the world record, but lost to LG, the famous Hikam El Garouche, in the race to get the world record.
Yeah.
Crazy. And this is a 19-year-old from Norway who's just smoking the scene.
It's because he's been chasing those brothers. I think you can attribute it a lot to chasing those brothers. Now.
Well, he's still
'Cause he's the
chasing them because
youngest.
Philippe just broke a national record in the
Right.
1K. So, Jacob, you got to get on it, man. They're still beating you and stuff. Well, they weren't racing in the same race, but, you know.
So let's go from young 19-year-old to
Too old.
older. Yeah, this gentleman has been running for 42 years. Doug Curtis. He has just been recognized as the U.S.'s toughest, most consistent marathon runner.
Wow.
And he has run 76 sub-220 marathons.
Oh, boy.
Yes.
I've done that once. You got me, dude.
200 marathons, sub-3.
So I think anyone who will willfully run 200 marathons in their life deserves either a plaque or like a statue or something, or we should probably put them in some kind of asylum because you're running 200 marathons. It's crazy.
I think it's quite amazing. And he was also working full-time in Detroit, Michigan. So
Where do you
I
find the
think
time,
that's
man?
pretty incredible that he was doing that.
And Michigander shout out.
Michigander shout out.
All right, we're going to end this segment with some sad news this time.
Sad.
I know, but we got to talk about this. So college sports are being cut. And naturally the attention is predominantly on the NCAA D1 because that's, apparently what anyone cares about in the U.S. But it's across the board. College sports are getting cut. And it's tragic and awful. And as you probably can assume, a lot of the cuts happen in those sports that are less popular, certainly less revenue driven. So like no NCAA D1 school has cut basketball, for instance, and they probably won't. But a number of them are cutting cross country and track. It's sad. And Central Michigan is on that list. So one of our very own schools in the state here, it cut men's indoor and outdoor track. Curiously, only men's.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it's not really helping them with funding a whole ton because they still have to operate the program, the sport, for the women. But they also built like a really nice facility not terribly long ago. And so it would be horrible to cut the whole program because then they've got just an empty facility.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad that the women's still on. Akron announced they were cutting men's cross country, and that's Clayton Murphy's home school, alma mater. And Clayton Murphy's, he's an Olympian in 800, and he's also a great miler. And so, yeah, not good stuff, and it's only increasing at the moment. A couple of schools have rolled back some of their cuts to reinstate the sports, but others are still announcing. So we grabbed a link to a tracker, a site that is tracking what schools are dropping what sports. And if you want to try to stay up to date on that, we'll put a link to that as well in the post.
What do you think the ramifications will be for those who are on the edge of like, do I do college sports or do I go pro? Like the ones that are good enough for that. Do you think that will tip them towards pro running more quickly?
It's contextual. It depends on where they are. It depends on what
program they're in.
Yep. And it's only a few. There's like 150 total across all collegiate divisions, which, if you spread that out, that's not a ton. So it's not like everyone's cutting sports at the moment. But we know that there's a revenue problem. The schools have a revenue problem across all levels, all schools. And so we're going to probably see more. So we'll keep you up to date on that if there's notable updates to make. Otherwise, it's a bummer. And if you hear about some of those things, apparently enough support to try to keep the program going has helped in some places. Brown is an example of that. They originally cut cross country and track, and now they've reinstated it. So if you hear about it in your alma mater, speak up and try to keep that program going because these kids, they need it.
Exactly.
Well, that about wraps up the topics for this week. And just keep in mind that we've always got more to share every week, new updates from the world of running. And before we move on, we got to take a quick break.
Today we are sharing about the personality traits of highly successful athletes, specifically runners. Recently we've been sharing some quotes from extraordinary American athletes, and we're using these superstar athletes as examples of these traits. We did an article that we'll link to with Instagram-sized quotes for your reference.
So we got this idea from an article that we read on sportsmanagementdegrees.com, and specifically isolating 20 different personality traits that they claim, the authors claim, you see in high-performing athletes. However, I immediately want to apply the caveat here because we know that personality science is convoluted at best. It certainly is not a perfect science, and it's hard to even always call it science because a lot of it is kind of guesswork. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to draw out what are the kinds of qualities that we tend to see in these really high-performing athletes. So this list is 20 of them. We don't even necessarily find ourselves agreeing with the equal weight placed on all of them. But it's also so long that we're not really going to try to touch on every single one of these either. So if you want to actually see the whole list and get into the author's explanation, you can do that. We'll put the link. We want to try to identify the ones that we tend to see most often in runners specifically. And we'll come back to the point in a moment. First, Andy, let's just walk through what some of these are and some of the examples that you noticed.
Yeah, the first one is inner desire to succeed. And I don't think that any of us would disagree that as a runner, you need to have a strong inner desire to keep running.
Yeah, it's hard to motivate someone else to run and be committed and disciplined in running and training.
I was actually talking about that with someone today.
Today?
Yeah, about getting kids to run.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's good for your child to choose to do that. But my mom actually was the one who kind of persuaded me because I wanted to do soccer.
Yeah, our audience has heard this story.
Yeah. So, anyway, all that to say, it has to come from within, even if it's trickery that gets you to choose it from within.
So a good example
kind
here.
Of trickery.
Yeah. Good example here from Krishana Williams.
Yeah, she's an Olympian. She's a world record holder in the 4x8 too. So she's an amazing athlete. She says, ever ask yourself why you do what you do? What motivates you to continue to strive through all the hard work and time spent? Well, for me, the desired end result and putting a smile on my face is one of my primary motives.
That's good stuff. That actually reminds me of last week's guest, Obse Baru, was talking about, so what's it all for? And I thought she just had this really big perspective, like just deep and wide perspective, which is great. So if you didn't hear that last week, go listen to episode 36, Obse Baru. Next up, we're going to talk about natural goal setter. So as a personality trait, I feel like this is more of an action than a personality trait. Like it's a habit. And we see that in all of the habits books, right? Every book that's ever written about habits talks about goal setting. But either way, as a kind of element of your consistency in who you are and how you do things, natural goal setter makes a ton of sense.
Well, it makes sense that Aji Wilson was a very good goal setter because she's achieved a lot of goals. She's an Olympian. She's the 800-meter American record holder. She has a ton of medals that I'm not even going to go through with them all because we do an entire episode talking about her. But she says, few better feelings than going into a race with a goal or plan and getting the job done.
I agree with that. I do. And I feel the same thing. For me, it's more fulfilling an experience to have a plan and then execute it successfully. It's more fulfilling than if I go into an experience with no plan and it ends up really great. That's still fun, but it just doesn't feel the same. But Andy, you sometimes like that feeling better.
Yeah, it's good for me to have a multi-tiered goal, and I realized that in college with help of my coach Rod Wortley. He had introduced me to this 3-tier goal plan, and that works well for me. But that's still goal setting.
It is, yeah. It's not the same.
And I like that this trait, like Zach was saying, can actually be learned because I might not be a natural goal setter, but I can teach myself for it to come naturally. So that's one that we can take away no matter what our natural bend is.
I think when the primary motivation, meaning you're doing the activity with some kind of intent in mind, some kind of purpose beyond just you enjoy the activity, when the primary motivation involves improvement, if you don't use goals as a way to benchmark that improvement, you're more likely than not going to just end up frustrated or demotivated a lot of the time because you don't have a sense of accomplishment as you're going along.
I really like White Pine Moving Mamas. I just saw that they've been doing a couple goals that are different than like a time goal. They were doing 100 miles in May is what they were doing. And I think they're doing the same this month. And I thought that was a really good idea because it's not a time goal. So if you're not in a stage of life where you're training really hard, there's still goals that you can set.
Well, if you ever want to know who the king of artificial goal setting is, like just creating a goal for the sake of having a way to achieve a benchmark, that's Strava. And the Strava challenge concept has dominated the world of this is a meaningless goal, and yet it matters.
It matters.
Somehow.
Yeah, if it's getting you out moving, it matters.
Or giving you a discount on Lululemon products.
Ooh, yeah.
Which seems like every third challenge is a Lululemon challenge. All right, next up is self-discipline.
Jesse Owens, who I wish I was related to, and I'm still going to try to dig and find if there's any connection, because my maiden name is Owens. One of my favorite athletes, actually the first professional athlete that I knew of in history because of my name being Andy Owens. So he lived in the time of 1930 to 1980 and is a 4-time gold medalist. If you don't know his story, you should be looking it up. It's called Race.
That's what the movie is called.
Mm-hmm. That's what the race. Yeah, the movie is called Race, and it's a really powerful movie.
It's great.
The battles that count aren't the ones for gold medals. The struggles within yourself, the invisible, inevitable battles inside all of us, that's where it's at.
Whoa.
Deep.
Yeah, and that's that point of, especially in running, you're fighting the battle inside yourself all the time. You're not always fighting the battle outside yourself, like the race and the competition and such, but you're always fighting the one inside. And so that's the one you really have to be able to win consistently to feel progress and success and those kinds of things. And we've heard it said that you'll be successful when you can conquer your own demons.
And part of that's through self-discipline, because there's so many things that are holding us back from achievement, especially in these high-performing athletes. They're going to have to snuff out everything that's holding them back to be the best in the world, to be the best in the country, and some of these people to be the best of all time. Right on.
Which feeds itself well into the next one we're going to talk about, which is optimism.
Charlene Lipsey, she is the indoor 4x800 meter record holder with that relay team. She also has won a U.S. championship. She says, "You are doing your best. Look how far you've come. Look how strong and resilient you are. No current situation or challenge can hold you down. Snap out of overthinking. Remember who you are, why you started, and where you're headed."
So she's got like 7 mantras in one, which is wonderful.
Such a great quote.
Yeah, that is optimism. Optimism at its finest is a gut reaction. So this is the hard thing to people will say I'm an optimist because I force myself to think. But optimism at its best is a gut reaction, and not everyone has an optimistic gut reaction, which is part of why it is a personality trait. It's not just a learned habit. It can be both. But as an example, I am not an optimist at a gut level.
He's not, you guys.
I'm not. My instincts are pessimistic, and you will hear it even in the way I talk about optimism and pessimism. My gut reaction to most things is pessimistic.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. And I'm rather optimistic. There are times that I let my emotions get the best of me, but I think overall I am intrinsically optimistic. But Charlene Lipsey, I tell you what, she's got some great words to share.
A couple others here for optimism. I like this quote by Alafine Tulimak.
She says, "Our best days are ahead of us. Stay positively optimistic and work your butt off." And Alafine, you've heard us talk about her. She won the 2020 U.S. Olympic trials team competition. She's the champion, so she's going to the Olympics. One of the few we know that will be representing Team USA. Really exciting stuff. And that reminds me, too, as I'm hearing that quote, about our conversation with Talem Franco, which was a couple of episodes prior to this one, and he had that optimism, and he did. So if you want a more protracted conversation that's optimistic, listen to that. These are some good quotes, and he had a number of great things to say too. And I do want to say Carl Lewis. I want to give his quote because he's one of the best athletes of all time. He's actually voted World Athlete of the Century. Did you know that? Zach? Yeah. He says, "If you don't have confidence, you'll always find a way not to win." And that is the truth. So that's a self-confidence / optimism hybrid in that quote. That's exactly it, because that's my pessimism at work, is I'm always finding the way it can go wrong before it ever does. And that's inside, outside, all around. Wait, it's all those things.
Are you telling me that I'm pessimistic inside, outside?
I'm just saying it can be any kind of situation. It can be external circumstances. It can be an internal struggle. In all things, we have to turn that back to optimism to see the potentiality of success no matter what the circumstances. And if you're curious, because you're not 100% sure, which most of us are, whether you are more optimistic or pessimistic at a gut level, just pay really close attention the next time
you're running a really hard workout or a race, at the moment when it hurts the most, pay attention to what you're thinking.
And then tip the scale.
That's so good. That's so good, Andy.
Well, thank you.
Wow.
Our next one is humility, which I didn't express there.
No, that was me not expressing humility.
So the idea of a humble athlete is that they don't really underestimate themselves or overestimate themselves, which is a very hard spot to be in, because the best athletes aren't going to be humble and thinking, oh yeah, that person is faster than me, I'm not going to win. But they're going to look at themselves and say, this is a great opportunity for me to grow and chase that really good runner, or go and perform with that really good runner. They're not thinking of themselves as less, but they're also taking their competition seriously.
Yeah, and so as a coach, this is always a fascinating conversation, right? As a coach, you always want, so I'm thinking about when I was coaching high schoolers in cross country and track, you always want them to believe they can win, right? You need them to believe that they can win. That was kind of the comments from Carl Lewis. However, you don't want them to be arrogant. And so how do you coach in a person the confidence to triumph over odds, to be, like, that level of self-confidence and pride without it being arrogant? And I think one of the keys there is that it's not humble to degrade myself in my own eyes, in my own mind, to look less of myself. And it's not proud or arrogant. Well, it is pride, but it's a good pride. It's not arrogant to look at my capacity to do something and recognize it for what it is. So if I see that I am capable, it's not a bad thing to believe that I am capable, and even to talk in that sense. Mm-hmm. I am capable of beating this person. It's not an arrogant thing to say that. And speaking again of my coaching perspective. But it's a really important thing to recognize how we can speak into that, and we're thinking like self-mantra type of thing too.
So this is like a daily action, right? This is not just when you step up to the line, because that's like, what? I mean, even for high schoolers, it's only once a week. So what are we doing in the meantime to be cultivating this? And Raven Rogers, she's 2019 800-meter world silver medalist. She has a lot of other accolades, among being the 800-meter record holder for the NCAA. She says, can't help but smile at the fact that I'm not even at my best self on and off the track. Growing is just one of those things that if it was easy, everyone would invest in it. And the reason why I translate this to humility is because she's able to see how far she can go. Like, it's like, I've not arrived, but I'm smiling because I've got so much more that I can do in my growth and in my self-improvement. And I think it takes humility to see that.
And I'm a big fan of Justin Gatlin. And if you're not familiar with his great triumph, when he finally, how old was he? 34? When he finally beat Usain Bolt, got that gold medal.
Amazing.
So good.
And if you know the name Usain Bolt, but you don't know the name Justin Gatlin, then you need to learn the
not
name.
American.
No. Justin Gatlin, he's
and some
a
of you aren't
five-time
American, I know that.
Five-time Olympic medalist. He's got 2 world gold medals, and he is the most decorated 100-meter sprinter in world championship history.
Truth.
And that's even beating Usain Bolt.
Truth. And the longevity matters there, because Justin Gatlin was able to be the best in the world for like 15 years straight. Not saying he was always the best in the world for those 15 years.
And that he's not still, because he's
amazing.
I think he's going for it. I think he's going for his, what would it be?
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't want to guess.
Good quote here.
Gratitude. Have gratitude for the things you have, even through rough patches of your life. No matter how small it is, be thankful. Now work toward bigger and better.
And you definitely saw gratitude on his face with that most recent championship win. Good stuff.
Tears of joy.
And we're not going to skip this next one either. Allison Felix.
She's a 13-time gold medalist. I mean, she's the most...
Wait, how many?
13-time gold medalist.
I thought that there was a law against getting that many gold medals.
She can't have them all in one spot. I don't think that she's allowed to travel with more than a couple medals at a time.
Has she tried?
I don't know, but I do know that is a rule, that she's not allowed to for liability sake.
Are you wearing armor? No, just all my gold medals.
She's got 18 career medals, which makes her the most decorated athlete in World Athletic Championship history. I think that beats Michael Phelps, actually. Yeah.
I don't know in total medal count, but certainly in track and field, yeah.
I've learned that track doesn't define me. My faith defines me. I'm running because I have been blessed with a gift.
And here's why, especially why that's humble, is because a person who can be at the summit, the Everest peak of a sport historically, that person, pride is not a difficult thing to come by. And I am that thing in so many ways, in that sense. And yet she says track does not define me, but it could. It would be very easy for track to define her because it's been like her whole life.
Yeah.
That's rich. I appreciate that from Allison Felix.
The next one is trust in the process. You have to believe and buy in to the process.
Yeah, so we know as people who try to help other athletes, whether it was when I was coaching high school and middle school or anything else, or what we're doing now with AtoZrunning, we're trying to support other athletes. There's an element of if you don't trust that the process can lead you to success, then there's almost no way it's going to actually happen because there's going to be moments of doubt.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's going to be times where you're going to be in a cycle and things aren't going to be great and you're going to think, oh man, this training isn't working or I'm not on the path to success. But knowing that the process is longer than the moment.
Ooh.
And
Andy, you're on top of your game today.
It's all this inspiration. It's getting to me.
So Andy, you're telling me that even though with your current foot injury, that it's still important for you to trust in the process.
It is. It is.
You're not blaming me for your injury then?
No, it's actually kind of an odd one. I don't think it.
I'm not sure it's related to training at all.
I don't think so.
All right, so Aries Merritt.
World record holder in the 110 meter hurdles.
I love the 110 meter hurdles. It's one of the most amazing things to watch because, first of all, these just monstrous men, and I'm not saying they all are, but some of the Americans lately especially have been just like these beasts of humans, like capable of running through a brick wall. And they're jumping these hurdles that are like 7 feet tall.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Somehow their legs go so straight, so high. I'm just telling you, it's a beautiful thing. A feat of human. What's the word for this? It's just wonderful. Great.
It is.
Okay, go on.
He loves the hurdles. I could say more about him because he's gotten a gold medal at the Olympics and was a junior champion and the world indoor champion. He says, there will always be days where you don't feel good or fast enough. These are the days you need to put in the work and trust the process.
Oh, he actually said the words.
Yeah. Focus on the good. Iron out the kinks and stay the course.
Yes. So that's the key to that success is to stay on the path, unless there's always an important consideration that if you're breaking down, that's a problem. But that's rarely the case in the context that he's talking about there.
Like, for instance, when you're injured, you just don't keep running on an injury. That will keep breaking it down.
Hopefully those listening have gleaned that we're not recommending that.
But I like that he says iron out the kinks and stay the course because that kind of sums it up. Like, okay, we need to evaluate the things that aren't going right. Yep. And once we iron out those kinks, stay to the vision. All right, Bernard Lagat.
Yes.
Who is also a fan favorite in this household. He's a 5-time Olympian. He's gotten tons of medals. He's got the record in the indoor 1,500 in the mile.
And he pulled off the amazing 1,500 5K win in the 2007 World Championships. That does not happen often, folks. Because remember, he's beating the world's best in both the 1,500, the world's best milers, and the world's best distance runners in the 5K in one meet.
Yeah. So in outdoor, he has the records in the 1,500, the 3K, and the 5K. So he has indoor records and outdoor records. Believe in yourself. Believe in the process. Remove any doubt about your own capabilities to tackle the task at hand.
So resiliency and the ability to learn from setbacks. Too many words to be called a personality trait, but that's what they said in the article, so we're including it. But really, I mean, we're talking about resiliency. That's what that ability to learn from setbacks really is.
So Brianna McNeil, she's an Olympic gold medalist in the 100-meter hurdles. She's been a junior champion, lots of stuff, lots of accolades. We'll have a link there. Did you finish the week off strong? Did you meet your goals? Whether you did or not, focus on the positives and how you can be better next time.
Yeah, how you can be better next time is so important.
That's resilience.
It is. And really, in running, there's never going to be a runner who doesn't experience setbacks. Because of the nature of the thing, I guess it's possible. It's possible to like have everything in your life perfect and consistent all the time. But even like the uncontrollables, like this pandemic situation, is a setback.
Right. And speaking of which, Tony McQuay, he's amazing, 2-time Olympian, silver medalist, gold medalist, world champion, all the accolades. He said, due to the Tokyo delays, the pandemic, he says, the focus continues. More time to build, more time to create, more time to elevate.
I love the word choice. I like the word choice because he didn't say like train and work hard and stuff, which obviously, that's what people are doing. Yeah. He said create and elevate. And
good words.
Wow.
Yeah.
He must be a poet.
Yes. Well, sounds like it.
He's a poet in the 400 meters. That's for sure.
Yes.
See what I did there? That was good. So resiliency matters. Here's the thing. The ability to learn from setbacks almost always comes hand in hand with the idea of adaptability, agility, adaptability. Like you have to be able to change the course in some sense, to some degree, to be able to learn from the setback. Because what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Yeah. So you've got to be able to do that. And most of us find that is a difficult thing. It creates a kind of cognitive dissonance where it's like, this is the thing, the trust in the process thing, right? This is the thing I should be doing, but I'm not getting the results I want, but I don't want to change it because I don't want to abandon the process. So that's that iron out the kinks comment from, who was the iron out the kinks person? Bernard, nope, not Leggett. Sorry. Aries Merritt. And so when he said iron out the kinks, that's really that's the key combination between trusting the process and learning from your setbacks. That's solid stuff. So this next one here is vulnerability, which I think is a really compelling idea for high-performing athletes. The first element of this is that anytime you put yourself out there, you just go for it, you're being vulnerable.
Yes.
Anytime.
Good point.
And yet, it's true that there are many of us who get nervous about the idea of really putting it out there. And we don't want to be that vulnerable because you might not succeed.
You hit the nail on the head with that. I didn't think about this word.
Well, you had so many good ones today. I thought I would try to throw it in.
Yeah. So I have thought that about running, and I think that's what bonds us sometimes as runners, because we are vulnerable with each other.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. And what Obse last week, what she said about running being a language, I think that kind of speaks into this too, because you're running next to each other and you're experiencing that vulnerability together. So that's a really good point. English Gardner says, when trying to obtain your destiny, it requires a leap of faith, but also requires you to be broken and stretched. Yeah. That is very vulnerable, being broken and stretched in ways that are kind of public for some of these athletes too.
That's true. So there's so many ways you can talk about, different directions you can take these concepts, and this one specifically. And one of the things I just want to mention, and this is me, I guess, just saying thanks to many of you listening. So anytime an athlete says, you know what, I don't have it all figured out, and I think I might need some help. So let me call up these guys who work with athletes and they help train athletes and ask them for help. And so clearly I'm specifically talking about those of you who have asked us to provide some kind of support with your training or coaching or any of that. And so to all of you, thank you, because you are being vulnerable in that moment, and we understand that. We want to recognize that. To ask for, to recognize that you don't have the solutions, and I'm saying this universally, is not an easy thing to do, and it's especially difficult to do it in front of someone else or to someone else. And so there's obviously, like with English Gardner's comment here, we need to be broken and stretched, and it's one thing for that to be in your mind. It's another thing for it to be transparent. And in so many ways, running often is. Yeah.
And how many times have we been sprawled out after a race, or vomiting, or sweating,
I have never done any of those things. Especially
peeing
not
ourselves, all kinds of things.
You're just talking about yourself right now.
Hey, I'm hoping that other people can relate to what I'm saying right now, but it is a very vulnerable sport. So I think many of you that are listening right now probably have this strength of vulnerability just by being in the sport of running.
That's it. Next up is the willingness to fight. And of course, we can't leave that off the list because running is a fight.
It is. Meb Keflezighi, he is a 2004 Olympic silver medalist, 4-time Olympian. He's won the New York Marathon. I mean, he's won Boston, so many things. He was a former U.S. record holder in the marathon as well. And he says, when race day came, I was ready to think big, be in the moment, and show grit in the face of suffering.
And there's definitely something to that where are you ready to be present in the moment, knowing that a lot of those moments are gonna be painful.
And it says willingness to fight is what this personality trait is, and to go into the day thinking about it, ready to be big, ready to be in the moment, and then ready to suffer. That is the marathon to me.
Yeah.
I mean, every event, I'm sure every running event, but when I think about the marathon, if you give it your all, there will be some suffering. Even those Olympic top qualifiers from the U.S., watching that video back, looking at their faces, they all looked in pain.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people are usually good at hiding that, even if they are feeling it. But I saw on the face of all 6 of those athletes who completed the race.
Yeah. There's something too, and I don't want to go off on this tangent for more than just a second, but I think part of the reason why Americans love American football is because of the clear struggle. Like you're literally fighting another person just in a somewhat civilized manner. And I think there's a reason we enjoy that, and especially we enjoy it when we know that they're not actually trying to hurt each other. That makes it feel a little bit better to see people fight. But running is the purest form of that, because you can't do anything to harm the opponent. You can only endure a greater degree of suffering yourself. And that is the most incredible kind of fight to willingly put yourself in. I don't know whether that person's going to be able to do this, but I have no choice but to try. And suffer I must.
Wilma Rudolph, she knew a lot about suffering. And if you don't know her name, she is a very large part of women's running history. She overcame disabilities. She was a sickly child, and she competed at the 1956 Summer Games, and she became the first woman to win 3 gold medals in track and field in a single event, or single Olympics, excuse me. So she's a 2-time Olympian, 3-time gold medalist, and 2 times bronze medalist. And she says, the triumph can't be had without the struggle.
And that is the point. And a good moment for us to kind of end our discourse on this list of personality traits. So clearly, many of these things are kind of also habits that you can develop. Many of them are also character-related things. They're kind of intertwined in a lot of things. And that's why, by the way, why I made the comment earlier, personality science is a convoluted science at best. There's just too many things that are influencing it that we just don't actually yet have tangible measurement of.
But we do know that they're important.
But we do know
we know that they're there and they're real and they influence our abilities and our mindset. And as I look through these, even though they're considered to be personality traits, I'm going to call them more like objectives, because even if I don't obtain all of a single quality here, I can see that I might have the potential to exercise that quality in my running or in my life. So I do think we can train towards better mindset and these qualities to be strengthened.
And, it's just helpful to have a specific area of focus too. We can talk about, having strong mentally, strong emotionally, those kinds of things. We can say that, but there's more to it than just being emotionally strong or mentally prepared, all of that. So that's helpful. We only talked about 9 or 10 of them on this list of 20. So if you want to see the whole list, and I recommend it. It's good to see it for the read, but don't look at a list like this and think, if I don't see myself in enough of these things, then I can't be a high performing athlete, because that's not the point. There's no way to even know that, because as you might guess, for every one of these where you can say humility is an important thing that we see in all these high-performing athletes, you can turn right around and say
overconfidence or
cutthroat
Yeah.
arrogance is the thing we see in all these high performing athletes. Absolutely is. We said willingness to fight. We see willingness to fight in all these high performing athletes, but we also might see like caution and so yes, it's both of them.
Yeah, so the idea is to cultivate the good stuff, feed the fire, raise the ceiling of potential, and realize and look for potential that I have already in me.
Yeah, that really is it. So it's always valuable to examine the person beneath the great achievements, and I think that's what's helpful in something like this. You see someone like Ajay Wilson and Bernard Lagat and Meb Keflezighi. You see these people, and you think, but who are these people, and how did the answer to that question influence their success? Because it certainly does. And it's not to find out how I can be just like that person. It's to see where those positive traits helped them along the way, and try to intentionally grow those things. Andy said it. Cultivate the good stuff. Try to intentionally grow those things in ourselves. And I think in so many ways, we learn the most about these kinds of things when in the midst of the greatest struggles. And so that's where that key point is, when the pain is real and big, when the setbacks hit and all of those things. That's where the gut reaction is going to come out. The unplanned and unprepared thing is going to come out of me. And so I want to cultivate those good things so that when the struggle hits, a good thing comes out of me.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of visualization as well. And I would have to say that inspiration comes within and without. So these athletes that I have mentioned here, continue to investigate their stories, follow their journeys, as many of these athletes are still at the top of their game and looking toward joining Team USA for another Olympics. And seeing these athletes allows for us to see the potential of the human. What was that they said about Kipchoge? The potential of the human race. Like, what was that?
Yeah. I can't remember the comment, but it was exactly that. In him, we see the potential of humanity kind of thing.
Exactly. So when we do that, we also expand our own vision of what we can do.
Yeah. I like that. And that's a huge part of why we devote so much of our time and attention to trying to bring guests on the show to hear their story and their experiences. And sometimes they have very specific practical things to share or ideas to give. And sometimes they're just telling about their experiences. And I think there is equal value to both of those things. And so always we're trying to learn from who other athletes and other people are and what they have accomplished and what they have to say about it.
So if there are some of these traits that you feel like you have and want to talk with us about it, if you want further conversation about these quotes and these athletes, we love connecting with you. So you can find us at AtoZrunning on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, the blog post, you can drop a comment there.
And one more shameless plug, we know that there are some kinds of race opportunities beginning to start to appear, more confidence that the racing scene will return in some capacity and is already returning. And with that comes the desire for greater direction and need for clarity in our training. And so if you feel like you're in a spot where you need or could benefit from direction and clarity or support in some way, we provide that. We do training, we do coaching, and we do a combination of training and coaching, depending on what you need.
Yeah, so hit us up, and of course, we'll talk to you next week.